Welcome back, it's Melanie, your She Shed Scrapper. So today I am back with a 2-page layout using the majority of the new Dino-Mite collection from Echo Park, but I am bringing in a couple of papers from the Dino Friends collection, which is super old, and that's what these two kind of aqua papers are. That's from the Dino Friends, but for the majority I am using the Dino-Mite, and I am cutting off 3 sides because I want this paper to border my layout. I am then going to cut off an inch and then half an inch, so that the border is even all the way across. I want the layout to kind of flow, so that is why I'm only bordering 3 of the sides. So for this one, I am using multiple photos and a 4x6 flip flap as well. I have already done a 1-page layout using the ephemera from the Dino-Mite collection and 1 piece of pattern paper from the Dino Friends collection. That was posted earlier this week. So if you missed that, definitely check that one out. I chose to do the 2-page layout second because I wanted to make sure that I had enough of the pattern papers to kind of complete both, and I knew that the 2-page would take up more than the 1-page. So here are all of my photos. These are from Dinosaur World in Florida, and I just could not narrow down the photos. There were just too many good ones. So what I'm going to end up doing is cutting these 2 down to 4x4, and then, like I said, that middle photo on page 2, that is going to be a flip flap, and that will allow me to get 3 photos in that one location, which I absolutely love. So I am trimming down my photos here just a little bit because I didn't want them to overhang on that aqua paper, and so I did have to trim them down so that I had kind of some leeway there. What I'm going to do is I am going to cut 4-inch strips of all of these patterns and then dovetail the one end, and these are going to go behind each of my photos. So I will have 5 different patterns on this layout, and then kind of an open white space on the very left-hand side of the layout. I could have easily done a 6 pattern, but I decided to leave it white. Something I want to work on is being okay with more white space. I need to be okay with, not covering up every single piece of the paper. So that is one thing kind of I was working on with this layout. When I place my photos down, I am going to try and separate the patterns based on kind of color. There's a couple that have white backgrounds, and so I wanted to keep those ones kind of separate. I didn't want them right next to each other, and so I do really try to kind of separate them based on color, maybe pattern too, I guess. But once I have these all dovetailed, I am going to start laying them down, and the rest of it kind of comes together fairly quickly. So you can see that, I flipped over so that plaid is separating those 2 white background papers, and then the orange will go next, and kind of it's a light blue background, but kind of helps separate the busier patterns as well, that orange paper does. I did trim down my 4x4 just a little bit more because I did want to back those and didn't want the overhang either. I wanted to also stagger these flags, and so I kind of, because I have the bottom dovetailed, that helps me kind of figure out, how high I want them. Usually if they overhang a layout, I will actually not cut them until they're actually taped down. But because I have the border and they're not overhanging, I had to make sure to cut them beforehand. And so with having the one end already dovetailed, it just allowed me to kind of get a better idea of where I wanted to kind of trim the tops down. I usually map my photos, usually map all of my photos. However, I just did not have room to map most of them. And so the two outside photos here are actually going to go right down on the pattern papers. Again, with the white background, I don't think it is that big of a deal. Of course, I would have loved to have kind of a separating barrier with a plain colored paper, but it just didn't work out with, I guess, the size of the photos and whatnot. So what I ended up doing is I actually, because I didn't trim that middle one down, I did end up backing that one a couple times because it is going to be covered up with a flip flap. And I was okay kind of overlapping the edges of those two outside photos, if that makes sense. I just felt like it kind of brought attention and drew your eye into that middle photo if I had it matted. And so that's kind of why I chose to do that one. I'm going to do the same process on page 1 as well and get these taped down. I believe I do mat the two 4x4. I think they're a little bit smaller than 4x4 at this point, but I'll just call them 4x4. I am going to, I believe, mat those just because, I don't know, they were a little bit busier, especially with having the two photos on that pattern paper there. I just felt like to have those pop, a white would help just enough. And I was able to trim those ones down so that I was able to do just a thin border around each of them. But I'm going to kind of just stack those two. I want you see, I placed them like that and then realized I want the bottom one actually on the top because it says Dinosaur World. That is like the entrance. I don't have a huge title on this one, but again, because I've already done that one page layout, that one has a giant title, and this will just kind of go behind that. And I felt like it was okay not to have a giant title on this layout. I do embellish that big white space though, so don't think like there's no title, there's no embellishment. I do embellish that white space. So I did do this layout right after I did that one page layout, and so I already had all of my ephemera separated. I knew I wanted to do a little bit of journaling. There were some great kind of sayings. I had kind of went crazy with embellishing, even though I have 5 pattern papers, 6 if you count the border. There were just some really good sayings, and I felt like it worked with the layout. So you can kind of see I'm kind of piecing them where I think I want them. I do have some great flares from Scrap and Happy Studio, so I wanted to incorporate some of those as well. One of the packs, the canvas ones here, the colors match perfectly. And I think she must have came out with this before the Dino-Mite collection. Unless I am like just discovering the Dino-Mite collection and it's been out for a while, I'm not sure. But it matches so well. I did decide to add one to the flip flap, kind of as maybe a pull tab. It's not a pull tab, but you know, to kind of help get the idea that you flip that one. Because I used that flare on the Be Strong, I needed to pop that up on foam tape, and a thick foam tape. So what I ended up doing is actually doubling up on one of the foam tapes, and that was like the perfect height. I should have added one kind of in the middle that does sag a little bit, but I think once it gets in the page protector, I think it'll be okay. So that is kind of how I'm going to embellish that white space. Be strong, be brave, be fierce. I just thought that was really kind of fun and cute. And I am going to add a few other things, but the whole bottom of that white space is just going to be empty. And I like the way that it looks. With having all the pattern papers and really embellishing a lot on this layout. I felt like that white space was okay and looked good. So you can see I am kind of going crazy with these canvas flares from Scrap and Happy Studio, but they are just so great. They match so well, and I just thought they were adorable. So I am going to keep adding a couple of kind of finishing pieces. I wanted to kind of add to that top of that flip flap. It says I love dinosaurs. I thought that was really cute, and I was able to tuck that under the flip flap. And then the nice thing about the flip flaps, you can embellish right on them. So I decided to embellish on the inside of this one, stomp, and then just like an oval dinosaur there. Nothing too thick. Obviously the canvas flares do add some thickness to this layout, and so I didn't want to kind of double that up on the inside of that flip flap. But yeah, just kind of adding a dinosaur flare and then a piece of ephemera and kind of piecing it together. I did find a mini heart, or a couple of mini heart flares, and the colors worked perfect, so I am going to sprinkle a couple of those in as well. And yeah, I don't know, the sayings were too fun, and I didn't think took away too much or added too much, and so I did kind of maybe add more than I normally would, but I do like the way that looks. And then to finish off the layout, I'm just going to sprinkle some enamel dots throughout and kind of just finish that off. I think these are actually a fall freckled fawn set, but the colors just match perfectly. The orange, the blues, the green, and yeah, just use those enamel dots to finish off this layout. I will link this collection down below. Again, I think it's new. At least it's new to me. So I'll link it down below. I know it's still available in the online shops. So definitely check it out if you have dinosaur photos or love dinosaurs like we do. So I hope you enjoyed this layout, and we will see you next time. Bye, guys.